Martin's heart was pounding. When he heard the whisper from upstairs, everything took on a surreal feeling. The diary was calling to him, but how? Wasn't it just a book? With trembling steps, he moved toward the upper floor. The door was wide, open, and inside. It was completely dark at first. He couldn't see anything. But then, in the dim light, an old desk caught his attention, and on it, something stood out. With trembling hands, he lifted the page. The faded ink spread across the surface, its age undeniable. But the most terrifying part? A single sentence was written in his own handwriting. "If you're reading this, I am no longer here." Martin's breath hitched. This was his handwriting? But how? At that exact moment, the curtain moved on its own. A shadow emerged in the corner of the room. It was here. Just before the door slammed shut, Martin caught a glimpse of the shadow's face. It wasn't a creature. It was himself. But it had no eyes. And it was smiling. Martin screamed, spinning around to run. But it was already too late. Alas, the thing he heard was a whisper. "You won't escape this time, Martin." Martin's scream echoed into nothingness as his body was completely swallowed by the wall. The last thing he saw was his dimly lit room. And then total darkness and then nothing. But nothing had truly ended. Martin slammed onto a hard surface. But it wasn't a floor. This was not the real world. A place resembling the underworld, covered in scorched stone. A red glow flickered, but there was no sun. The air was thick with the stench of rotting flesh. Martin quickly scrambled to his feet, his breath caught in his throat. But the most horrifying realization hit him. This place was real, and he could never go back. In front of him stood hundreds of people. But as he looked closer, he realized they were all himself. Some were chained. Some writhed in agony on the ground. Some were burning, but never dying. And then one of them stepped forward. Its face was burned, disfigured, but Martin recognized it instantly. Because it was Martin. "You finally arrived." The other one said, "Meet yourself." Martin tried to scream, but no sound came out. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't alive either. Martin had been a terrible person all his life, and his death had been the most agonizing fate imaginable. Now, he was in the other world, and he had to face himself. Death is not just an end, Martin. Here, suffering lasts forever. Suddenly, all the other Martins began to move toward him. Some screamed in agony. Some tried to pull him in. Some just smiled. And at that moment, Martin understood everything. There was nitrogen monoxide escape, and death had finally claimed him in its most terrifying form.
If you watched this video, it means you're a good person. Show your support by liking and subscribing. I need you.